a new one?
Yes.
I did.
Couple months.
Cody.
All right. All right, we will call to order this emergency meeting of the Park City School District on January 14th at 10 a.m. We will do a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, good morning. The board has called this emergency meeting today to decide whether or not the district moves to remote learning or continues with in-person learning at the schools with high case counts, keeping all current mandates in place. If this decision is to move to remote learning, the high school, Treasure, Ecker, and Jeremy Ranch Elementary would move to remote model, with the other 3 elementary schools remaining in person for 4 days next week. Because the legislature only allows us to consider remote learning for the schools that have reached the threshold. We are elected officials and have been charged with making the best and most informed decisions for Park City schools. We understand the cases in our community are at a all-time high. And that our community and schools, that the most ski resorts in the nation are experiencing the same issues. This is not unique to Park City. As the pandemic drags on, we fully appreciate the fatigue, stress, and strain it has put on our community, staff, parents, and most importantly, our children. The mission of the Park City School District has been and continues to be to support our students equitably and achieve their academic and social potential, which we continue to believe in-person learning support for an academic, social, and emotional level. Today, we'll be hearing from stakeholders and discussing the pros and cons of each aspect of this decision. Today's outcome will only be to determine if we move those schools to the remote model for next Tuesday through Friday. So that being said, I am going to turn the time over to Mr. Tanner and Dr. Hunt with their presentations. I'm going to ask the board members to hold any questions until the end. And we'll move from there. Kara's on.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to steal the screen here, but I have provided you copies as well so that you do not have to turn and stretch and be heroic. First of all, thank you. It takes a lot of forward thinking and a lot of great leadership to come together at a moment's notice and try to be thinking through and hearing and understanding a very complex problem. So on behalf of all of those of us who work here at the school district, thank you for demonstrating that kind of leadership. It means a lot to us and we appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead then and start on this presentation. There's a few things that I want you to know. One is that I did not develop all the ideas that are here in isolation. I'm really appreciative yesterday to have had the opportunity to have input from all of our administrators, who in turn are working with and getting input from their teachers. I also had the opportunity to meet with HR and with our PCA board to be able to understand a little bit more about some of their thoughts and impact around any difficult decision like this. So the report that I'm about to provide is really an academic one. It's talking about the information that we feel is important to be understood when it comes to understanding the impact of learning modalities during this continued pandemic. So the purpose of my report is to provide you with information. It is to provide you with accurate and current data regarding the impact of Omicron virus. It's to provide you with input from district and school administrators and to address some of the specific impacts that we know occur for students and families and staff members when we need to be in a different learning modality. So let's start by just looking at the data. There's a couple of things that I want to share before we move to the data. I don't know if all people in the community are aware, but our city school district has been trying to very proactively approach understanding how we can support our students and our staff during this time. And one move that we made that the board had approved and recommended for us was to be able to proactively perform what we called a voluntary test to start. That meant that during the first week of school, people who wanted to come and test in our school or have a COVID test to see if they indeed were infected with the virus were able to do so. The interesting thing about that is that may have inflated our numbers very quickly. We've not yet done that kind of voluntary testing across our whole school district. So what we don't know is if we had not done that test to stay, would we have known those students were sick? And that's just something we're not going to know. So I wanted to say that off the bat that we very quickly were identifying cases, and this is very different, I think, than maybe other school districts because we were really the only one that did a proactive test to start program. So as you look at some of this data, I'd like to look first at the secondary schools. I've just taken from the 3rd of January to yesterday and shown you the number of students that were absent. This data looks really different than maybe, the problem here is that it's tracking a minimum of 1 period being absent. And it's impossible for me in the short amount of time that we've had to go through those 288 absences and understand, is that a full day absence? Is that a half day absence? I do have some idea about which ones were excused or not excused, but I don't know what they were excused for. That data hasn't been tracked. So I do want you to see that the numbers are higher than they have been before, but we do know that that's happening with Omicron across the nation, and definitely Park City School District's not immune from that. So the number of absences is significant, but the data is only as accurate as it's been entered. We do have a lot of anecdotal information that's out there, and so I simply wanted to provide the board with numbers so that you can have an understanding. But do know that we identified a lot of people quickly because of that initial proactive test to start. The picture is not as dramatic in our elementary schools. We do not have as many students that are out. These numbers are higher than we normally would see at this time of year. I think that one of the things that is significant with any absence is that if these are positive tests, there's a lot of time and energy that's going into contact tracing. This is something that just has to be done and cannot be avoided. You'll see that the most impacted school really is actually probably McPullen, although we're not seeing those numbers in the dashboard. And that may just be because these absences are not all necessarily COVID. This also shows the impact of potential of parents who maybe are out of town or choose not to have their children at school right at this time. I wanted to also give you a picture of how this is impacting our staff. There's an interesting thought here. We talked in our board meetings a number of times about the difficulty that we're having, not only here but nationwide, around having enough subs to cover. And that really is having a tremendous impact, both at our schools, teachers that are covering additional classes. But as you can see, it seems to be kind of holding steady. This sub request is for all staff members. And you'll notice, for example, that it appears as though we already know that 7 people have been absent on the 31st of January. I just wanted you to see these are requests. One of the things that's interesting here is that we do have a lot of support staff that provide important services, but wouldn't necessarily be requesting a sub because they may not be in a classroom assigned to students. So it's difficult to track and understand this, but I can tell you that this has been a problem all year long and will continue to be a problem probably for the years to come, because we are not in a position to be able to staff the way that we have been for years. And I wouldn't begin to try to explain why. It could be that people just aren't comfortable in schools. It could be that we are against challenges of, some shortage of workers in general. So, but I do want to express that, our teachers are stressed, but they really have been pretty stalwart in working with us to try to keep, I'm so appreciative that they are stepping up and stepping in the classrooms when we need them to. The second reason that I wanted to provide this report is that I want you to have some input from our district and school administrators. So I've taken every single one of our administrators sent me lengthy feedback around what they were thinking, what they saw in their school. And I was able to take those and analyze them into some themes. I have linked them here so you can see the specifics of all of those things, but there are some things that you'll see are really targeted just at the secondary level, some that are targeted just at the elementary school, and then you'll see some things that move across every part of the district. One thing that we see is that our staff and students are under a lot of stress. They're under a lot of stress trying to navigate two modalities, but I think generally they're under just a lot of stress at this time. And I think some of that is a general concern about becoming ill. And we know that we can't necessarily control that. That is something that could happen at any place, which is a struggle. We know that there have been a lot of disruptions to learning because of the shortage of sub coverage, and there are some significant absences from school. Our administrators at the secondary level think that there's an opportunity to maybe reset here to clean schools and move kids away from that setting, but they acknowledge that we don't have any control over where kids might be if they're not in school, and that they wouldn't be congregating and really causing contagion for each other anyway. We do know, secondary principals do know that instruction in a remote setting is not as effective as it is in person for all of the reasons that we've talked about for the last 2 years. And they are concerned that there's an unequal negative impact for specific groups of students. Those who will not have supervision and support at home, those who need additional services to support their learning, and those who have trouble in communicating with families to our school systems. They're also concerned that shifting to remote learning for a short period of time can be confusing for families and for students, and it may result in an unintended consequence, which is that our students check out or not engaged for a period of a week. And it's difficult to track, to provide targeted support and communicate with students and families who are not in buildings. Generally, though, our secondary administrators do believe that secondary teachers may prefer to have a reset. I will say, though, that we have not individually polled our teachers, so I cannot tell you with certainty that every teacher would say that they prefer that. And that is something that if it were asked, we certainly would try to get that information for you. In terms of elementary themes, the elementary principals feel really strongly that remote learning for youngest learners is a challenge. And they particularly point to K3 as being a place where it's really there's some significant supervision that's needed at home. Elementary teachers are not as experienced at using the learning management system as our secondary teachers are. And a shift to short instruction remotely may also be confusing. You'll see too, there are some things that are different here that some of our principals share concern that our elementary teachers have young children that may be impacted if we close or needed to close our schools, and then we have issues of childcare that I know that our teachers would work diligently to overcome, but that if this is such short turnaround time, it might be very difficult. Also, our elementary students are not used to taking home devices on a daily basis. So while we have a plan and could get those deployed, it wouldn't be as simple as just turning it on like we would for secondary. And then our district office is just concerned that we want to be able to provide as much support as we can. And we struggle to do that whether we're in person or not, because right now is an unprecedented time where we are concerned about the health and safety of students and of staff, but also about the emotional and the mental well-being of the people that we care so much about. So we're concerned that we have adequate ability to be able to support people. But I want you to know that we will support any decision that is made and are ready and prepared to do either, because our main focus is really on making sure that we're providing continuity education. I do want to say that there's a significant amount of work that would need to be done if we move to remote learning to address individual students' IEPs. Each of those has to be done, with an addendum, and to be done correctly, it really should be done thoroughly. So it would be difficult to do that in this short time frame. But our special education department is top notch, and they have already been thinking through that this year because they have learned some proactive things from the time that we went into remote learning. And then finally, what really are the impacts of choosing a specific learning option for students and families as well as staff members? Here's what I want to acknowledge that we don't know. We don't know how long this outbreak will last, right? And we don't know if we'll have another one right behind it of a different kind. We just don't know that. We don't know how many of our students and families will respond to any decisions that is made and how they will respond. Changes are often difficult, and rapid changes are hard to understand and to navigate. And we also don't know what regulation may come right around the corner. My experience over the last couple of years has been that right when we figure out what we think should be happening, some things change, and we've learned to be flexible, and we'll commit to continue to do that moving forward. Here's some things we do know. When we're looking at needing to change modality of learning to emergency remote teaching as a temporary consequence of some external force, it is not nearly as effective as in-person instruction. And even more than that, online learning can be effective, but it's most effective when it is planned, when it's planned around wanting to be able to provide a certain type of instruction to children who are prepared and ready to be supported through that. I will say that if we move to emergency remote learning, that's not the intent. The intent is not to provide robust instruction, it's to create space and distance. And therefore, the remote learning during a 5-day emergency piece will not be comparable to what our students would get if they were in-person learning. We also know that the potential negative impacts of remote learning are experienced very differently for each family and each individual student. And that is very significant for some student groups, namely those who need additional learning support and those who are in families where parents struggle to communicate with our educators. We do know that we have amazing teachers, that they've been trained and they have expertise with in-person learning. But our short stint over the last couple of years with emergency learning hasn't been enough to be able to say that our teachers are comfortable or that they're ready to do this. Other than that, they are willing and they know what they need to be doing and will do what we need them to do. Also, during remote learning, students at all ages may be unsupervised and unable to be fully supported at home. And that's a responsibility that we don't take lightly, and that we need to be certain that any decision we make here doesn't impact families to the point that they are unable to care for their children. And we also know that the health and safety of our students and their academic success is our priority. Balancing these two polarities at this moment in time is unprecedented. And it is the hardest thing that we have or ever really will do. I don't envy the difficulty that is all of ours as we work to try to navigate this difficult time. Finally, I do want to express, and I know you know this, that the real heroes of this story is really our team. And they take big ideas and bring them to life every day for our students and teachers, and are truly committed to families. We appreciate their passion and their commitment, and I know that whatever they're asked to do, they will do it with professionalism and the care and concern that they have always exhibited for our kids. That's the end of my report. I don't know if you want to save questions till after mine, or if you'd like to address them.
Yeah, let's have Mike go and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Hahn.
So clearly from Dr. Hunt's report, she didn't sleep last night.
Yeah.
It's quite a presentation to pull together short notice. I don't have anything nearly this slick, but I can talk to you from intimate knowledge and working closely with our directors. I can tell you that operationally, we've been pulling things together, but we've been increasingly redlining our folks as the labor market continues to degrade. And so the question is this a Omicron variant in addition to that labor shortage that we're all experiencing, having to recover from within our operations, or is it in addition to in a major problem? So I'll just walk through each one of our operational areas and give you kind of a snapshot of where we're at. In food service, in talking with John Hopkins, he's doing a great job, continuing to put a great product on his full staffing. He is down 2, but that has nothing to do with this latest surgical micron. He has 1 person out right now, and who should come back after the 5-day period on Monday and be able to contribute on Tuesday back to normal operations. So he considers himself in a pretty strong place. If the district chooses to move to remote, it's no problem to pivot to meal delivery as we have at alternate sites to provide for folks who might not have a meal otherwise. So we can make that food service. Operation for buildings and grounds and custodial and all that work. On any given day, we've been down 10 to 20% of our maintenance staff. That is elevated above normal absenteeism. And we have seen some impact of COVID on that force. But when we look at it in the aggregate, people are able to cover for each other and allow us to still bring a good footprint forward. A little different than education, where you've got teachers in the classroom. If they're not there, there's immediate impact. If we don't get the snow moved this second, we can move it an hour later and get to it. So we've got a little relief just by nature of the beast of it. In the custodial staff, we're a little bit in a more difficult place. Anywhere between 20 and 40% of our custodial staff might be out on any given day. Again, we have some relief in that we brought extra help in from the outside to help us with all the wiping stuff. So some of our contract staff is able to help us cover some of the custodial responsibilities on a temporary basis if we run into a situation where we're short staffed in the building. And we can flex ourselves in overtime with that group to make sure that the next morning we're presenting a safe, clean quality product for our kids. So a little bit different of a beast than what we have in education side of the house, but certainly something that we continue to deliver on an operational basis, what the community expects from us. Transportation is probably our most difficult environment right now. I'm talking with Rich this morning. They are absolutely redlined. We've got our office staff is our person who's in charge of logistics and routing is out. Our dispatcher is out. Our Rich is driving. Mechanics are driving. We have absolutely no flex left in the system today. So if the bus breaks today, we're going to be in a situation where they're on the radio scrambling to get kids home. And so that situation is exacerbated a little bit by the Omicron variant pushing through. We have 2 absences that we know are due to that. They can likely return next week, but I think it's just inherent with the degradation of the workforce that we've been experiencing nationally as a result of all the technology we have. Security, we're ops normal. We're able to put our footprint forward. Luckily, we put the systems in place that are pretty autonomous. And all the work that we've invested in the last couple of years is shining right now. So I think in summary, we can still continue to deliver based upon this. We might be seeing some issues, especially in transportation, where if the numbers continue to manifest themselves within our transportation force, then we're going to have to start pulling back services. We don't have a choice. And this week, we weren't able to support on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday transportation to get the kids from the after-school program at Carly's back home. We've had parents want to participate; they can still do that. but we don't have the people to provide transportation. So we expect more one-off outages on transportation, and it's probably our Achilles heel right now. But I think operationally, we can still support the educational mission of the district based upon our company.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I am gonna have each board member, I'm gonna go around. I'm gonna actually start with Kara since I know she's a little bit stretched on time. Kara, do you have any? Huh?
I
Okay,
have a,
Dr. Gilday, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, hold on, Kara. Hold on, Dr. Gilday would like to speak. Let's come.
Okay.
I just want to thank Amy and Mike. Excellent pulling together this report for the board in this emergency meeting. Really, you've done a great job. And we are here to strategically, tactfully, carefully, thoughtfully, put anything in place that we need to for the benefit of our students, our staff, and our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Gilday. All right, Kara, go ahead with your questions.
Okay. I like that we're being very mindful of what is best for our population. I think that it's imperative that if we stay in learning, which we all know from 2 years of studies, that is the best way to do it, to keep our kids in class. But I think it's imperative that we keep our mask mandate and really allow that to be instituted by the staff at each school. I just think that we don't want to overlook that part of the planning. That's it.
Thank you, Kara. Anne?
Sure. So Dr. Hunt, in the remote model, I should probably know this, but I don't remember, in the emergency remote model, do the teachers come to the building? So the teachers come to the building, admin staff, everyone is physically in the building, and kids are home.
The kids are remote. The adults are able to separate themselves in their classroom and be able to, keep the distance. We don't want to place the burden of having to, for our, teachers to be able to have a different internet service, or we don't know how their internet is, or we just want to make sure they're fully provided the materials and the resources they need to be able to conduct really good remotely.
And then what if a teacher has a kid that's in one of the schools that's gone remote, needs to come to classroom and have service, does the kid, what happens there? Is there?
So at this point in time, we treat it like an employment situation where teachers are responsible for getting childcare for their students. One of the reasons is for that is that we increase our inherent risk when we have people in the building that may or may not be supervised appropriately while teachers are trying to work.
Okay.
And they can be a distraction. That is one of the things that I addressed as a concern, that, if we do go remote, those are things that our teachers are going to be having to work through, and may cause additional stress.
So potentially we could have more teachers out in a remote situation because they're not scrambling from childcare.
We may.
Okay. My other question is, do we have any union input, the teacher union input?
So we met yesterday with PCEA.
Yeah.
Generally, they were thoughtful in some of the things that they were saying. They have not polled their specific audience either. Those that were there that were both secondary people and could speak to some of the impacts that absences are having on just the general nature of teachers having to try to navigate students at school and students at home. But they really weren't able to address elementary issues at that point, and really indicated that they just want to be able to do what is necessary to relieve the stress and burden of teachers.
And do you have a number of the percentage of teachers that are currently out district-wide right now?
What we have, well, when we looked at it, we looked at about, I think that Shad said that we were approaching 10% of our overall staff has been out.
Okay. And then, thank you so much. Probably more questions, and I'll probably put them with somebody else first, but I promise I'll answer. And then, Mr. Tanner, just on the transportation, I know you've been beyond creative and trying to figure out ways, but are there any other, just when I take my daughter to school, there's a line of parents out there each picking their single kid up, driving where their neighborhood community, pickups, drop-offs, or there anything, this is a temporary solution as we're getting crunched with the bus situation where we could pull together as a community to
Yeah,
help deal with it.
I definitely think that that is a good go-to option.
Yeah.
We haven't had to resort to that meltdown scenario yet. Our pressure relief valve temporarily has been not supporting some of the after-school programming where we'll keep the child supervised until parent can pick the child up. And so that's been our de facto circuit breaker at this point. But if this situation continues, not just with this Omicron period, if it gets to a point that we are no longer able to support the routes, despite all the creativity that's going on that happened, I think definitely a cry to arms with our parents would be something that would be well received. I think we can rely on our parents to creatively carpool to help us out in that situation too. But that said, there's still maybe that handful of kids who doesn't have the option of the bus. And so perhaps with those children who don't have some other supports, maybe we can come together structure that might be a little less robust to service those children individually. So definitely on our radar, we haven't had to go there yet. I've asked Rich to prepare contingency planning for 2 drivers down, 5 drivers down, 10 drivers down. And those involved, like I said, the circuit breakers, not supporting the after school program, consolidating groups. We're trying to, at this point, to protect our core business. Our core business is getting kids to and from our regular programming at school. And that's what we're focused right now.
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, I probably won't say, but just this pandemic just keeps going, and I think back to what President Grace, the equity and the not only academic, but the social and emotional. And Jacqueline, for you and your entire team, just keeping these kids engaged and present. Just I want to thank you all so much for involving my part. This has not been easy, and for the community to stay flexible and creative. And no one in this room did it. We're all managing it, and it just really tests our strength and our ability to work together as an even race. So thank you.
Well, we're just thankful on an operational side of the house that this week and next, the weather's cooperating.
Yeah.
It's not
It's only a
accentuating
big snow.
the problem, right? Allowing our buses to roll without too much difficulty.
Thank you. Andrew?
I think it'd be interesting to compare your numbers of absenteeism with just like what the standard week is. Just to give us some magnitude, but I think in the interest of time, that's not possible, so.
I can tell you generally that on average, we're about 80%, or I'm sorry, about 85 to 90% attendance. The numbers you're seeing here are in the 70s.
So an extra 10%.
About an extra 10%.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, look, I commend the work that you guys have done with the teams. I mean, I think where we are with our overall admin team, your guys' relationship with 700 plus employees that we have just speaks volumes to the fact that we're able to continue to operate. I think for, as we head into budget season, we've been looking at this literally for years. I mean, this is the 5th year or 6th year that I know of that we have a shortage of staff on the substitute level. And I think we've tried to do it ourselves. We've tried to do it outsourced. I continue to think the solution is to hire more teachers, and have people in each school who can be full-time substitute, because we know we have years and years of data in terms of absenteeism of staff and educators. And so I think we could probably, with pretty good accuracy, fill in those gaps. And then when we come into situations like this, we're a little bit better off. I mean, look, it's all about magnitude. But I think we should keep that in mind as a board, as we look at the budget, to find out between now and then, okay, what's our average encourage daily absenteeism for teachers or educators, whether that's for staff meetings, professional development, conferences, illness, whatever it is, and try to plug those gaps on a forward basis so that we have a little bit more flexibility. But yeah, I think, yeah, super solid presentation. Gives us a lot of information that helps us. Thanks.
Right, Wendy? Yeah, first, thank you. I mean, I know this is, like, the real work is falling on all of you. I'm so appreciative of and thoughtful about the stress and the strain. And my link is does remote for 4 days, which is what we're here to decide today, help with that? And I feel like looking at the outlines you put with the feedback, I'm not sure. I mean, you can't prescribe, you don't know. I am thoughtful about a few like little logistics to Anne's point about how if we have, let's just play this out. The schools that go remote, those teachers, there's an added stress of getting childcare, coming to the campus, so then they become absent. Is that absence, and those who already are with the high numbers, are they now able to teach because they're absent, because they're quarantined but have no symptoms? Like, we're not going to ask teachers to be more sick because we're in remote to turn on their computers and start working, right? Like, is this really, does it solve those issues? I'm not, undermining that these are real issues, stress and sub shortage, but that the solution, we just have to be looking at other solutions to the stress and the reset and the strain of subbing, and that remote is not, it's been brought to us as a possibility because of where we are in this pandemic right now, the high numbers and all of that. So it sounds to me like I know it's to control the numbers of the spread, but as indicated here, we can't guarantee that families off for 4 days and kids at home with the stress of how to manage, because nothing else is getting shut down in Summit County. So people are expected to go to work, still expected to be doing their thing. Our biggest issue sounds like the subbing, the stress, the reset. And yes, the virus spreading is a real issue. And that, I guess, would be the reason we would go remote, to hope that might reduce the numbers of, because we're not in each other's classrooms or whatever, which we can't guarantee that they don't go elsewhere and do the spread, right? We don't know that. But that's the idea behind this decision. And I'm more thoughtful about having a work session around how do we reset, reduce stress, help get these transportation issues, subbing issues resolved. But am I reading that correctly with the secondary? Like, does a reset, can you tell if there's a reset feeling by having a remote week? Does that feel, for what you're hearing? I mean, I know we don't know, we haven't told everybody.
In my conversation, the reset is focused as much on the health aspect as it just is on not having to navigate both teaching children at school and teaching kids at home.
Right.
But to your point, I think that the board's obligation is to determine if there is a definite risk by being at school, right? That and the way that it's worded, in terms of the way that you would think about it, makes this decision very difficult, because I don't know that you can predict at this moment in time what will happen if you go remote or what will happen if you don't. I don't agree.
Well, I think, like, for me, like, I think you're spot on, right? It's kind of like, we looked at remember when we looked at this originally, we thought about, are we going to come back, right?
Yeah.
There was genuine concern, and it was founded that, like, okay, it's not like the whole county shut down. It's not like kids aren't going to see each other. It's not like stores are closed. We have massive community spread right now, and it's because we live in a community that has a lot of tourism, and that's one of the reasons we all live here. We all make that choice. to live in a place with a lot of tourism, and so things like flu season are bad, things like COVID spike, you know, in waves, because there's a lot of people who want to come and visit and recreate, right? So I kind of think, like, you know, it's kind of analogous to the whole testing debate, which we're going through in the state right now, which is, if you look at it as a preventative measure, is it effective anymore? The cat's out of the bag, right? Whether it is, right? And so then you say, well, I mean, for me, it's like, where are the kids safest? Right? Are you safest at school if you're not feeling ill, or are you safest unsupervised at home? And I would be willing to bet that statistically, it is far in favor of having kids here from a safety and a wellness perspective. And for me, based on that and based on equity, for all of our students, this is a no-brainer decision. That's all right.
Well, and I would just follow up then, if as we decide, if the goal of my thought about the reset and the stress across the board, is there ways, I mean, and I know we can't solve every problem, but how we could, if my question is remote canceling out that stress and that worry and all of that from your perspective of what, like, secondary, particularly at secondary level, and I know other levels too, but or could we start really considering, okay, what could this look like Tuesday morning if we don't go remote, and we know that our focus is reducing the stress, keeping kids safe, keeping everyone healthy, you know, is it revising enforcement? Is it more presence, even of those of us, you know, like, do we get real creative with more presence of other people on the campus to help with some of that? You know,
Yeah, I can tell you that one concern I know at the high school, I can't speak to the other schools, but they are struggling with the enforcement of the mask mandate. And I have spent some time talking to them about how we're going to navigate that and try to move through that. And we're working on that actively right now. I think that is a large source of stress. One thing that that I can say is that this is a short-term learning option. I don't know that 4 days will necessarily relieve stress long-term. It's very likely to do that short-term, but it may induce stress, as you said, Ms. Peters, in other places. It's really hard to predict that. I am always open to finding unique solutions to support the wellness of the people that we work with. And I don't think we need a pandemic to tell us that that's the right thing to do. We will continue to be doing that. But I think unprecedented times call for unprecedented ideas. And I would welcome the opportunity to workshop and think through how might we look at this in a different way. And I did want to tell you that our administrators do have some ideas that they think might be, you know, and I would be delighted to share those in that setting.
Okay. Can I just say one really quick thing? I mean, we're not one and done here, right? We are a ski town, we're a resort town, I live in a condo, every single condo is packed, there are lines for mosquitoes. We've got, you know, winter break coming up in 3 weeks. You know, we've got spring break, also, this isn't gonna be over, in my opinion, until April, when everybody's gone, when the weather's changed. So all of these great ideas of how do we so that we're in a position of proactivity and we're not sitting here kind of like in the back seat again. So, yeah, I mean, this is to me the beginning of unfortunately very long winter of us trying to figure out problems.
Well, and working with the board, we've done some cool things, right? I mean, putting this Friday enrichment in place in elementary schools to give time for elementary teachers to have more playing time, and shifting our schedule so that our secondary people have Fridays in common and can do particular vertical. We've done some things that I think are making a difference, and if we can continue to think that way, we'll be able to start really making a difference. But it's going to take a really horizontal approach. I'm always plugging things that work, right? And I'm really excited that we had more people apply for our Teacher Leader Academy than we could actually staff, and that says to me that we have some people who are committed to help us think through really thoughtful approach to what the next couple of years in education look like, you know, from a grassroots place. So I think there's an appetite for that, and I think people would welcome the opportunity to have that input.
Thank you. I want to hear from you.
Oh, I will. I'm gonna.
Sorry.
Wendy has one more question.
Mike, this is a transportation. I know we talked about and this is in terms of like, if we have some work session figuring out these other issues, where the real stress is and all of that, how to resolve those, and maybe remote isn't doing that. Have we looked at retired bus drivers in town? At all, and calling them up, yeah? Okay, yeah. I know a couple grandparents around who are like, I was a bus driver.
Well,
And I mean,
Our recruiting efforts continue.
Yeah,
And
okay.
The reality is that we got it, what we think is a good price point, we offer benefits.
yeah,
The board authorized 4 full-time driver positions with benefits. Additionally, last year, we weren't able to staff any of those. We haven't been able to staff any of those this year. And I think it's just the wholesale labor market nationally that we're feeling the impact, particularly here, because in the past, we had kind of a blend of rural and, kind of resort community here. And so our traditional people who were able to help us out were farmers, people who could,
okay,
drive a route in the morning, go to work in the afternoon, drive a route in the afternoon, and make a good day of it, and probably get a decent living for both of those, and that just doesn't exist anymore. So now we're at a point where we're in a very high cost demographic, and now our competitive set is the valley, and those jobs just aren't there. People aren't filling jobs out there. There has been some success in Wasatch County that for the substitutes they've raised $5 an hour. We're not benefit position. So that's a trade-off that possibly we can have.
yeah, okay,
Rich thinks that might be the solution, but I think it's more of the demographics of that workplace in Wasatch County that allows them to take advantage of that. And I'm not sure that that's what that feels.
yeah, got it.
But we have shaken the trees.
Yeah, I know you have, yeah, no, I'm not doubting that.
Do you have any?
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna say thank you. I know you guys work tirelessly every day. You guys, everybody in all of our buildings for the last 2 years have worked tirelessly. And our goal since the beginning of when we were able to come back a year and a half ago was to keep our kids in person for the equity and the health and safety. And my concern is the Band-Aid. We kind of spoke to that, Dr. Hunt, is is this a quick reaction for 4 days? And I don't know. And we just came off of a 2-week break. That 4 days is gonna help with that Band-Aid, or is it just, at what point in this snowball effect are we in? But I keep hearing that it's not these 2 weeks with Omicron that are stressing out our district, are stressing out our community. It's our community, and the district especially has been stressed since the beginning. So to be a very knee-jerk reaction for 4 days is concerning to me, especially making sure that we have our kids in the right places in the right state. So I don't know if I have a lot of questions. I think you guys answered them pretty thoroughly, and I appreciate it. And I also sat on a meeting yesterday with PCEA and for the teachers directly. So, and I also heard their struggle where they also said, being in person is the best thing for our students. And yeah, I mean, they can go, but even going remote for them is not necessarily the easiest thing either. They're not getting what they need for their students. So, so thank you anyways for all of your time. I'm going to circle back to all of the board members. I'll start with Kara. I know Kara actually needs to step off this call if she hasn't already. Kara, I'm just hoping that you could give us your input on and your thoughts on to stay in person or remote.
Well, there sure is a lot to weigh on this. Everyone's comments gave me new questions. But one thing I would ask is there any way that we can poll the teachers? Because it sounds like the older kids have much different needs than the elementary age kids. And that the teachers at the high school, it sounded to me as if they would want to do remote for 4 days and regroup and reset. I would like to get that information from teachers if we can, but I know that it's the weekend and I don't know how that's going to work. But I'd be willing to support all of our teachers and staff, as we all would, in what their specific needs are, because I think the needs, say, at Trailside are much different than what they are at Ecker or any of the other older kids. So that doesn't really answer your question, I know. But I guess to answer your question, I would like to see in learning stay, but because we want to keep our kids safe, I'm again going to mention the mask mandate. That's a very important part of keeping people safe. I don't know that going to remote learning is really going to help that much with the spread of COVID, because nothing's shut down and you can still go to the grocery stores, you can still, visit your friends. I don't know if that's going to help us get our numbers down on COVID at all. That has not been proven to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara. All right, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, just, I don't know if anybody else saw it last night, but I did, because it kept marinating, and I know there's a lot of aspects to this. But I think Andrew mentioned it, and Carrie just said nothing else is shut down, right? Ski lines are out the door, and the fact that we're being challenged and asked to make this decision, nothing else other than Sundance, which I commend for keeping the safety of our town at heart. My suggestion would be to remain in person and keep the mask mandate in force. And just ask administration in that direction.
Andrew?
Yeah, I agree. Stay in person. What's best for the children. And I like your idea, Wendy, of looking at a work session. CPA and HR, try to come up with admin, try to come up with some creative solutions. And I would also be in favor of authorizing additional spend to hire teachers now, to try to start getting people on board now, because we know we have a need today, we know we're going to have a need next year and going forward. So as a board, I would say, as a board member, I would say I think it's a great idea. You start exploring that, how many we need and what the cost is going to be, so that when we meet Tuesday, we can have a conversation. Probably put that as, I would like to see it as an agenda. To have that as at least a discussion point on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, it is that the real big challenge is finding ways to reduce stress, to reset, to help support in other ways, especially, at all levels, especially at the secondary level. I'm thoughtful about the impact of going remote for 4 days, moving that meter much. And actually moving the meter possibly creating some more stress. I certainly do understand that a reset and being like, oh, okay, I'm not as a teacher exposed to this today. I'm not dealing with enforcing masks. I'm not dealing with those kind of being able to solely, I saw a note here, focus on education. I would recommend that we stay in person with the caveat that we have a work session ASAP about how to better support and creatively come up with solutions to some of the overarching problems. Like I look at this and think benefits to moving to remote. I'd love a column benefits or how to reduce stress. Like what are our targeted goals that we need to and I feel like this remote option was brought up at a time when it's an option to reducing the real problems and helping with some of these real challenges. But that there's actually maybe some better answers out there for our biggest challenges right now. And I'd be willing to do a work session on that at any moment. And really appreciate that I also, and I think this will come up Aaron, at the end here, but knowing that there are other options if this doesn't, like something like this might not work for family, that we can work with those options. Like, I know there's still a lot of absences to manage. Kids who are stuck at home because of quarantine. We have to come up with, make sure that they're still getting access to learning. The families that, you know, are struggling with how to keep their kids or keeping kids safe and in masks and all of that, like working all those kind of things out. I just don't think remote learning addresses all that. It certainly doesn't long term. It might for the next 4 days. Next week, it's nice. We have Monday off. I get to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Not quite a full day. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you guys for all of your input. I'm going to confer with your input and agree that I feel that in-person learning is going to be the best to stay with right now. So to give the district the direction to keep us in person, that being said, I want to be very clear that this has always been a fluid and always in motion. And we meet on Tuesday, and we have the ability to again meet at any other time if we need to change direction. So that we are aware of that. But I mean, really, we rely on the superintendent and the admin team to ensure the proper supports are in place. And as we implement this decision, again, I understand the mask mandate has been a huge challenge. So whatever we can do to support our teachers through this, I want them to know that we do support them 100% in helping implement that. As a community and as parents, please be respectful of the final decision, regardless of your personal feelings or beliefs. I know that we are never going to make any person happy on either side at any given time, but it is our job as elected officials to ensure that we are seeing the big picture for the entire community and for our students. We are all in this together. This is not an issue that we created, and we have to continue to work together. So if you have a student that is sick, please keep them home. Keep them and get them healthy. If you are a teacher and you need to stay home, please stay home. And if this is a decision that we made today that doesn't work for your family and you have concerns, please reach out to your teacher, to your administrator in that building, and they can work with you and help your child go remote for a certain amount of time that you see fit. And again, I think we said that this is something we can and will revisit as we need to, and not just because of the governor's orders, but we will continue to revisit this as we have in the last board meetings for the last 2 years to ensure that. But please know that we realize that our decision might not work for everybody, but we just really do, like, let's work together as a community and let's get through this. Thank you. I will take this time to adjourn until our regular session meeting on January 18th at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys.